I promise thoughts on Jane Fonda, and thoughts on Jane Fonda you shall have. So it was announced today that Jane Fonda, and let me just read from this Variety report, if I can find this Variety report. Quote, Jane Fonda has relaunched the Committee for the First Amendment, a McCarthy-era initiative founded in the 1940s by her father, of course, Henry Fonda, to protect against attacks on free speech. The committee has already received the support of more than 550 A-list names. Just to be clear, there are not 550 A-list names in the world. They say it includes Gracie Abrams, Quintana Brunson, Kerry Washington, Natalie Portman, Aaron Sorkin, of course, Aaron Sorkin, Spike Lee, Viola Davis. I'm not going to read this full list because, again, it is very long. Oh, Rosie O'Donnell. I just noticed Rosie O'Donnell, our friend, is on the list. I hope she asked her therapist if it was a good idea to sign per the conversation we had the other night. But Variety goes on to add, the McCarthy era ended when Americans from across the political spectrum finally came together and stood up for the principles in the Constitution against the forces of repression, Fonda said in a statement. Those forces have returned, and it is our turn to stand together in defense of our constitutional rights. This just makes my head hurt, because comparing what just happened to Jimmy Kimmel to the decade of actual McCarthy-era callbacks, and we can have a separate debate about the merits of Joe McCarthy's crusade. Read Stan Evans' book. I think it's called Blacklisted by History on that. We can have another conversation about it. I'm sure Inez would actually love to have that conversation. But anyway, Jane Fonda is comparing what just happened to Jimmy Kimmel. That's what the gist of this letter really is. Comes after what happened to Kimmel, who's back on the air, by the way. He's back on the air. Colbert is on the air until the end of the year. They didn't just cancel him and replace him with a right-wing host. They canceled the whole show. Okay, so the idea that creeping McCarthyism is represented by what happened to Kimmel and Colbert at an emergency level, when that same concern was not extended to the many, many people. In fact, it's not just that those concerns weren't extended. It's not just that a lot of the same people who signed this letter were just quiet. They were active participants in cancel culture for about 10 years. And it started before woke was really even a word, quote, woke was really even a word, but obviously picked up and hit a crescendo after 2020. This letter, I would have taken seriously then. I would have taken it seriously then. Just like, by the way, we had Brendan Carr on this show and asked him about whether maybe the entire law just needs to be changed so that the government doesn't have the power to yank potentially broadcast licenses in the question of, quote, public interest. Carr's argument is what we talked about on today's show that Inez and Rachel made, which is Republicans, while the levers are there, should use the levers of their power. But again, I just will remind everyone, Jimmy Kimmel is back on the air, and in all likelihood, the reason he was pulled indefinitely for, what was it, like 2 to 3 business days, is that there were boycotts from smaller companies who had smaller local markets to worry about. So personally, I don't enjoy the government jawboning late night comedians. It's not something that I think is like a great use of anyone's time. I think it would be probably better to build out a full case of how ABC violates the, quote, public interest, or to just say, hey, I prefer to get rid of these standards, but they're here now. And we have to talk about that and come up with a plan for these technological changes. Of course, that's where I am on this. But the idea that you would extend this level of concern and this hyperbolic comparison to the McCarthy era right now after what happened to Jimmy Kimmel, when you said virtually nothing for the last decade. In fact, in many cases, you said way too much in the other direction, encouraging these insane, when you go back and look at some of these stories, which were just tornadic forces on social media, a lot of the same people were cowardly staying silent or actually encouraging this because some artist had a thought that fell out of line. Think about Winston Marshall and the Mumford & Sons. He said something nice about Andy No, and he got kicked out of his band. artists should have been at the forefront of shutting that shit down before it even escalated to the point that it escalated to. And even now, you're starting to see a couple of people starting to LARP, like they're once again marching for free speech in Sproul Plaza at Berkeley. Probably one of the only people who deserves credit right now, honestly, is Joan Baez, who I think was at like 1964, one of those Sproul Plaza demonstrations. And when Berkeley was trying to cancel Ann Coulter for speaking, this must have been like 2017, somewhere around there, Joan Baez stood up and said, let her speak. She said something like Ann Coulter's awful or whatever, but she said, let her speak. That was not repeated by anybody. She was alone. And it actually, because of that, took some courage to say the baseline sentiment that artists who should be uncomfortable with pushing those kinds of boundaries and should certainly be comfortable with making others uncomfortable by defending free speech that pushes the boundaries, they were nowhere to be found. They weren't leaders at all. They were followers, and they were complicit, and they were leaders against free speech. So it's completely laughable that Jane Fonda is now organizing the committee for the First Amendment. The First Amendment, after the many violations. I mean, this isn't even getting into the Biden administration, the Quiet Skies revelations that came out this week. Have you seen those? Go check out Matt Taibbi's reporting at Racket for that. Check out the new revelations that Aaron Sabarium reported on CISA under the Biden administration this week. Where were these guys during that time period? Absolutely nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. Telling us actually that I think Joe Biden was okay. He was the healthiest president that we have ever had in some cases. Now, to be totally clear, if Jane Fonda is truly concerned about some of these mergers that look like they're in the works and are under the thumb of one particular man/family, that would be Larry Ellison, the co-founder of Oracle, who, for what it's worth, as the Quincy Institute posted this week, is the single biggest donor of the Israeli Defense Force, a very powerful technological figure, geopolitical figure, and domestic political figure. He is, looks like going to be one of the big investors in Donald Trump's TikTok deal. His son just was behind the merger of Paramount and Skydance. That merger was done with Larry Ellison's backing, and they are right now apparently prepping a Warner Brothers bid. So that would put CBS, CNN, HBO, and TikTok, all under the control in some not insignificant part of, or in some cases a very significant part, but in a serious significant way under the control of Larry Ellison and his son. That is too much power for one human being, and I'm hearing a lot of the conversation focused just on the news media. But if Jane Fonda is concerned about the movie studios that are getting wrapped up into this, she should be. She should be. If this happens with Warner Brothers, Paramount, all of those different companies coming under one roof, I'm here to hear it. I doubt that we'll see many artists go in that direction, though, because they know where their bread is buttered. So I'm with them if they want to stand up on that. I think that is an absurd amount of power for one human being to have. Larry Ellison is right of center, so he'll probably get more criticism, slightly more criticism than some enormously powerful left of center folks have gotten. I mean, just think about when a lot of these billionaires were anti-Trump, the way that the media treated them when they were anti-Trump versus when they kind of flipped on Trump. That's a fun case study in media coverage if you want to go back and look at it. But if that's what Jane Fonda wants to talk about, I'm all here for it. But what we're actually lurching towards is a social media fueled, dopamine machine driven virtue signaling cycle where people are seduced by the promises of the algorithm into posting things that don't need to be posted, emotional thoughts that maybe change 10 hours later, but then you have to dig your heels in because you've already posted it publicly. There's just a horrible, vicious cycle happening when it comes to free speech. And there's a lack of consistency that's to be expected because that's what partisans do. It's the word partisan. It's in the word partisan. It's part of the concept. But not everybody in this country is a partisan, and artists should not be partisans on free speech. Journalists should not be partisans on free speech. And so I think some of these issues are way more complicated than the legacy media makes them out to be. And I'm here to explain that as best I can. But yeah, I think it's a crazy amount of power to be concentrated in the hands of one person. I don't think the government should be complaining about late night lines. We've talked about the nuance in that case, but no, it's not like an ideal situation. But these people have no credibility whatsoever. And I think all of us should think about how to preserve our own credibility on these questions in an age where every thought we have, we are seduced to think of as a product that gets us dopamine feedback in the digital casino that is social media. That is what creates a lot of pile-ons. It's what creates this awful incentive system to virtue signal things publicly. Question, like, are you posting this because you want someone to know that you know something, because you want someone else to see that you think something, that you are something, maybe that you are good, or maybe that you are part of this team or that team? Does it need to be posted? What is the purpose of posting it? Is it something that too few people are saying? Are you raising a new point? Like, all of these things, I'm not perfect, and I'm certainly not claiming to be, but the systems are designed to keep us that way and to keep us imperfect. And that's where cancel culture comes from. And that's where we're going to continue to see it. It is not going to die down. It is going to happen indefinitely, because we're all being manipulated to be a part of it for the sake of profits in Palo Alto. I've mentioned this before. It's really hard to go to sleep after the show. Maybe Rachel and Inez are going to experience that right now. After you have all of the adrenaline of a live broadcast, falling asleep is difficult when you wrap at 11. And I really mean this, though. Those Cozy Earth bamboo sheets, I look forward to sleeping. It makes it much easier for me to jump into bed after the show. Cozy Earth bamboo sheets and bubble cuddle blanket are fantastic. You get excited to jump into bed even after the high of partying with Rachel and Inez, at least virtually. These bamboo sheets are next level, buttery soft, breathable, and they keep you cool all night. You'll sleep a few degrees cooler and wake up genuinely refreshed. And the bubble cuddle blanket is like a warm, luxurious hug, mid-weight plush faux fur, equal parts nap-worthy and stylish. There's a reason Cozy Earth offers a 100-night sleep trial and a 10-year warranty. That says it all. They know you'll fall in love. So visit CozyEarth.com. Use my code Emily for 20% off. That's CozyEarth.com, code Emily. And if you get a post-purchase survey, let them know you heard about Cozy Earth from After Party with Emily Jashinsky, because home is not just where you live, it's how you feel. Let's go home with Cozy Earth.